Joining me live is the Director of Freshwater Strategy, Dr. Michael Turner, to talk about this. You did a little bit of work for Liz Truss in the lead up to her becoming Prime Minister. It is extraordinary that 6 weeks in she could have, such little confidence in her, just not on the public, that the Tory members that voted for her, Mike. How did it happen?
Yeah, it's a horror show. Ultimately, we have gone from a little bump in the polls when she was elected, little bump there. Actually, Freshwater Strategy did some polling just before and as the budget was coming out, and it showed a small 7-point gap between kind of Labour and the Conservatives. Still just shy of a majority for Labour, but certainly an opportunity there. And the fallout post this mini budget, which wasn't so mini, has been unreal. And since then, we've been in a downward spiral. The Chancellor has lost his job in order to try and save the Prime Ministers. And now we see the Prime Minister desperately trying to save her own. Yeah,
she certainly does seem like she's trying to do that. It seems like, we've seen this movie before when we haven't had any cabinet ministers resign thus far. But once you start to see that, it's kind of over. We saw that with Boris Johnson. I know we've seen that in the various leadership challenges here in Australia as well. I mean, perhaps it's a cheeky comparison, but I did see someone this morning saying that Liz Truss is about as unpopular as Vladimir Putin in the UK now.
Yeah, well, possibly not quite that low, I'd say, but she is very unpopular at the moment.
They didn't go head-to-head in this poll, by the way.
No, but I think there's a recent YouGov poll that just came out that said that actually Liz Truss is the most unpopular Prime Minister on record at the moment, which is obviously a remarkable statistic. It's a very dangerous time right now for her team and her, in the sense that, she's really put forward an agenda which she promised during her campaign, and she put it forward all in one go instead of kind of drip feeding some of those communications about what she was going to be doing during the mini budget. And, though budgets are difficult, particularly at times where there's rising cost of living, most people don't really understand that, a budget is as consequential as one we've just seen in the UK. And, it's cost the Chancellor his job. And, now we can see just the impact it's had on public opinion in the UK. We've got a budget coming up in Australia, and no doubt the Prime Minister and Jim Chalmers will be looking at what's going on in the UK and taking heed of that. But these things are really consequential to people's lives, and you can see that result in the public opinion now.
Yeah, it just seems like the government, or perhaps is it her, or is it the product of a 10-year-old, 12-year-old Conservative government after COVID, their cost of living crisis? They seem like they're completely rudderless, like they do not know what to do, because the mini budget was at odds with Conservative values, really, and at odds with what the central bank there in the UK was trying to do. She went from the darling of the Tory party, this, the pedigree, being Conservative to her core, then her first actions were anything but that. So, not being true to her values or the values of her government. Is that fair?
Yeah, look, I think it is fair. I think there's lots of good Conservative policies in there. I just think it was too hard, too fast, and these are delicate things to communicate to people. Remember, the fallout came not necessarily because the public thought that tax cuts were bad per se, but because the key stakeholders in society, financial institutions, banks, reacted very badly to it. They weren't informed. And actually being Prime Minister is as much about communications as it is about the public policy, and you need to bring people with you. Yeah. And I think the mistake here was that it caught people off guard, and there didn't seem to be a solid plan about how this was going to be paid for. And politics is a brutal world, and we can see now Kwasi's lost his job, in comes Jeremy Hunt, and all of those policies have been reversed now. There's even talk about the energy subsidy being reduced just down to 6 months now.
Wow.
And that was the big £100 billion policy, and that's going to be chopped right back.
Yeah, extraordinary that when it was announced by Kwasi, it was actually more than the whole furlough scheme during COVID. So that's just, gives the idea of the enormity of it all. But there is a cost of living crisis in the UK. Energy bills are through the roof. They're unaffordable for most average families. Putting fuel in your car is almost unaffordable. So what happens now with that? Because there hasn't really been this net zero debate in the UK, has there, like there has been here? Does that re-erupt, do you think? Do you think voters are looking a little bit more closely at the renewable revolution, if you like?
Yeah, and don't forget it's coming here as well at some point. So, yeah, the price rises will be coming to Australia. I do think, we've recently conducted some polling in the UK and also in Australia around what people are willing to pay in order for the UK to achieve net zero. And in the UK, it's a little bit higher than over here. It's about £8.50 a week, which is about £450 a year, approximately. I think that it's interesting to see that really that tails off very, very quickly. If it goes up above and beyond that, then they're really not willing to be able to pay for it at all. And again, as the cost of living increases, it might find that amount is squeezed even further. So yes, I think there is. Reality might be biting for a lot of households now about what the potential impact is going to be of energy price rises. And I think it's very important. It's extremely difficult if you're in government right now and you're making decisions on this. I don't envy you. It's very difficult.
Yeah, it certainly is. Okay, final question. Boris Johnson, a return.
Yeah, we talked about this, didn't we?
Do you think?
Yeah, I would not rule it out. That sounds bizarre if we were talking about this 8 weeks ago. And you did suggest that he might have a tilt coming back at this. There is some chatter among Conservative Party circles to let Liz Truss continue for another year or so and potentially bring Boris back before
the election.
Yes.
Well, he's proven in the election, isn't he?
Yeah, well, he certainly is someone that can communicate well, and we'll see whether or not that comes true. But it's a small percentage, but it's not zero.
I tell you what, Lord Edward Lister, when I spoke to him in the UK, he said never say never either. So look, he's a big Boris Johnson fan, but we'll see where that ends up. Mike, always great to talk to you.
Likewise.
See you soon.